The blackwing virus was the zombie-like plague that existed in legends under the Galactic Empire. But what would have happened if a similar event took place on a far larger scale in the midst of the Clone Wars? Now, I am going to be leaving a link to what exactly the blackwing virus is just here on the screen now, so if you guys aren't aware, or if you want to know its origins or some more fun facts about it, then just check that out now and then come back and watch this video afterwards, because it's actually a really cool story that is now unfortunately legends, but you never know, Disney may choose to make something similar to this canon one day. Now, obviously, this is legends material, but it's a pretty fun subject, and I have noticed a lot of you have mentioned it in the comments of previous videos, so I thought it would be quite fun to do. So without any further ado, let's continue with it. So for this video, we're going to be saying that partway through the Clone Wars, the Confederacy of Independent Systems comes into possession of some of the blackwing virus strain. Now, this is one of the most powerful bioweapons available, and for this reason, it seems like the pretty perfect weapon to use against the Republic's organic troops, as it'll kill their enemies and leave it for their droid armies to pass over completely unharmed. However, we're going to be saying that in their rush to use it, they don't exactly carry out any due diligence and don't really realise what exactly the blackwing virus does in terms of reanimating corpses. So they're going to use a weapon on one of the battlefields, and since it's quite relevant at the moment, we're going to say they use it on Anaxes, the location of a lot of shipyards and a key battle point during the conflict. It makes a lot of sense at the end of the day, because the CIS wants the Republic off the world, but realistically, they want the shipyards intact. So it's going to go pretty simply at first. All the Republic's troops are quickly going to begin the agonizing decomposition process before dying and eventually reanimating. Remember, this virus is actually force sensitive. So if you haven't watched the video, it's actually made from a force sensitive plant, and that's likely how it manages to control its hordes. It also means that this virus is actually smart enough to not begin the reanimation process until enough people are infected. So eventually, all of those dead Republic troops are now going to start to rise. And the Separatists are going to be quite rightfully so horrified when the undead soldiers begin to override their positions and destroy their droids. Also remember that these aren't only run-of-the-mill walking zombies, they learn and they can even manage to use equipment and starships. So you're looking at thousands of blaster-taunting, unkillable clones and Jedi. And although the droids can't be infected with it, realistically, they're not going to stand a chance against something this reckless charging at them. The Separatists will likely try to use orbital bombardments to try to stop the outbreak, but by this point it's too late. The very world itself is infected. Both the flora and the fauna can also hold the virus. This is at the point where in 40k they would probably use Exterminatus and just wipe out the entire planet, but the Separatists aren't gonna do that. They're probably just gonna bomb the crap out of the world and then leave it and move on to the next battlefield. However, inevitably, the infected will find a way to survive. And they'd likely use leftover ships, and hell, they might even be able to make and repair some of their own. Because as I did say, the infected from this plague are incredibly intelligent. And as soon as the horde becomes able to traverse space, it's going to spread like wildfire. Now, I chose Anaxes for a reason. And that's that it is a core world, and it's only a few hyperspace jumps to many other key core locations, including Coruscant, Alderaan, and many other colony worlds with large populations. And the Republic fleets are going to try to hold them at bay, with things such as blockades. However, this is pretty much impossible. All they have to do is get a few infected on board a cruiser and it will spread. And realistically, they'd likely just begin crashing ships into the planet, and the undead occupants would then flood by the inhabitants. It's also important to note that the virus can become airborne, so it is possible, depending on how smart the virus and the infected are, that they could find a way to distribute it far quicker. Needless to say, as soon as it becomes airborne, it's going to spread far quicker than it does when it's just generally the plagued zombies that are carrying it. Ultimately, I don't think the Republic will stand a chance in this scenario. As soon as worlds such as Coruscant become infected, it's completely out of hand. We're talking about hundreds of billions of undead, and soldiers dispatched to stop them would also quickly be turned because in the Republic, majority of their military and police are organics. They don't have a huge dependency on droids in the same way that the Separatists do. As well as this, equipment such as the clones' respirators are useless, and the Republic's army and navy would quickly fall to join the Horde. So the core is really going to become the epicenter of this entire pandemic. And there's a lot of ships there, so all of the infected are then going to begin to spread out to the mid and outer rim with all of these ships, and all of the newly infected plague holders from the core. Also, as a side note, the Jedi would also be infected, and realistically, the Jedi would probably maintain their ability to use lightsabers and possibly use the Force. I can't say that for certain though, but it is a Force-sensitive virus, and therefore it's possible that the Jedi would be some of the most overpowered zombies you could even imagine. Now, at this point, the CIS is going to begin to crumble. The Separatist Council, who controlled the droid armies, is not going to be caring about the war anymore. At the end of the day, the tax breaks that they were fighting for aren't really worth it if most of the galaxy is dead. So they're going to be a lot more focused on self-preservation, and they're going to begin taking their armies and abandoning Separatist worlds. Any non-essential organic life forms are just going to be left to fall. At the end of the day, the more living beings they have around them, the greater the chances are of them getting infected. So the Separatist Council and other rich tycoons are going to go off and make their own strongholds. Now, realistically, it's very difficult to say who would actually survive this epidemic. I mean, at this point, it's terrible. There's probably thousands of billions of zombies out there, and they're on ships, and they know how to use weapons, and they're coming for you, basically. Now, some worlds are going to be naturally advantageous for defending against the undead, but nearly every single species can become infected. So, you might say that the Wookiees on Kashyyyk would be safe, they can hide up in their huge tree fortresses. But then there's going to be zombie Trandoshians, a species that is very, very well adapted to fighting Wookiees. And then there's going to be zombie Wookiees, which are also going to be pretty useful at fighting Wookiees. Now, Kamino would be safe for a while, but eventually the sea life on the world would also get infected. And there's lots of other species that can survive in water, such as Mon Cala or Gungans. So eventually even their tight-knit facilities are going to be breached. Separatists and other galactic elites who hide away on private worlds would be safe for a while, with amassing of droid armies, but only for a time. Resources are going to be difficult to come by. Food sources will have been infected, as will water supplies. Not to mention, as I said, flora and fauna can be affected. So as soon as your world comes in contact with the blackwing virus, you're basically screwed, and you're just a time bomb until eventually you're overrun and become one of the zombie horde. Your best bet would probably be hiding away on a large star cruiser. These things normally have enough supplies and fuels to last months, if not a year or so. And you're also going to be able to move around to avoid large concentrations of the horde, which you don't get with a space station as much. This is actually something that I can imagine someone like General Grievous doing with a huge crew of droids. However, I don't know if this would actually work out at the end of the day. They still need fuel and they still need supplies eventually, so inevitably the ships would have to dock. As well as this, if any infected did manage to get aboard or possibly get inside the air filtration system, there would be no escaping it. And I think that we can all agree that a zombified General Grievous is both amazing and terrifying at the same time. Ultimately, I think that this would eventually consume the majority of the galaxy. However, there is some advantages here. One is that without new life to feed them, apparently the zombies often report a cannibalism of their own, so it's possible that the hordes would eventually kind of just wipe themselves out by consuming one another. As well as this, there are some people who are naturally immune, so assuming some life forms could stay alive long enough to create a cure, it would be made eventually and then distributed. But what do you guys think? How would a scenario like this play out? And where would you want to be in the Star Wars galaxy in a zombie apocalypse scenario? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, I do hope that you enjoyed. If so, please remember to like, share and sub, as it's really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @TheLoreGuy and tick the bells with regular updates. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you're all staying safe out there with current events, and I'll see you next time.